Hi, Steve. How are you?
Hey, we got it to work finally.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm recording if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, great, great. So I hope it records everything. We never know with Zoom. So, okay. So, yeah. So, how was your trip?
Well, I'm gonna adjust the volume here. That was a bit of a mixed bag. Um, the engine wasn't running well on Thursday during the test day, and then the first practice session on Friday wasn't really good. I was having some kind of a engine problem, and felt like it was running out of gas at the end of the two long straightaways. So then we threw some changes at it, and it quit the pit lane going out for the first qualifying session on Friday afternoon. Of course, that created a full panic mode. So I'm on the telephone to my engine builder and trying to figure out what's happening. And he told me who had the parts to fix it in the paddock. We had to run around and find them. And so did all that work, ate dinner Friday night. When everybody was kind of went home, we drove it around the paddock and it passed the 10-minute test. So we figured it'd be okay. And it was really good Saturday morning. Went out to qualify. The car was great. And then the session got black flagged after 2 laps because of a wreck. And so there I am, 34th out of 40 cars because I never got a good lap in.
Oh, yeah. Well, but you were there. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
but the story's not over. So there were 2 races, and I passed 14 cars in the first race and 6 in the second. So made something out of it.
wow. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's impressive. Like just to be there alone is awesome. So, that's great. That's great. But yeah, so but it sounds more like maybe fuel injectors or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, these are Formula Fords are old cars. They have old school carburetors, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
problem turned out to be a needle valve that didn't was seating improperly. And well, if I diagnosed it faster, I'd have qualified further up the front and had a better result. But you're right. It's the participation points are still pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. That's more than 99.999% of the population could even say that they were there with the car. People even say that I couldn't get my car to run the way I wanted it to. I mean, not too many people can even say that. So I'm impressed. So anyway, all right. So yeah, so basically, when I met you that day and you mentioned that you were around when the transition was made from expendable packaging to returnable packaging. I thought, well, this is a gold mine because everyone says, I don't know how it started. I don't know anybody that was there when it happened. So I have a feeling that people will watch this in automotive packaging.
Well, I did not work at MP&L, so I wasn't directly associated with the decisions, but I can certainly share with you my observations
Yes, that would be great.
over those years.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, start wherever, whatever really sounds good to you. And I know I sent you some questions to, kind of spark conversation, but really, I just kind of want to hear your story, like what you were doing and what you saw, what the packaging was like before, how it impacted your work, whatever things stand out to you.
Okay, all right. Um, I arrived at Louisville Assembly Plant in 1987. And the reason I was there was that at the time, the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, were getting really beat badly by the Japanese car makers in the JD Powers quality survey. And the company wanted to do better. And Dr. Deming was advising at the board of directors level at the time. And he made the observation that there weren't very many problem solving skills in the assembly plants. They were just essentially moving metal. So, so the decision was made to put these teams together by vehicle subsystem, train us all up in statistical methods, and we'd go out there and we'd reduce variation and improve quality. And that's why I was there, and that's what we were working on prior at the beginning. But going back to the packaging, there was there was returnable dunnage probably from day one in automotive. Big stuff like body and white panels, engines, transmissions, rear axles. There's no way they had to be, there'd be no other alternative besides some kind of returnable dunnage, because they had to be put into some kind of steel rack to safely hold these things. And then the racks were stackable. And if they designed them right, they would cube out a box car. And a lot of these big things came in on rail, and they'd be returned. But a lot of things came in cardboard boxes, and they were typically big cardboard boxes, and they would be mounted on a wooden skid, and they could be picked up by a forklift, and they could be, whether it came in on a truck or came in on a rail car, they could be moved onto these huge stock racks that towered over the assembly line on both sides. And so it was like you would have your backup stock up on the third level, and then when the big box down below where the operator was working was emptied, the supervisor would have to call for his forklift driver then to go swap them out. And that's how assembly plants ran. And of course, the poor operators had to go in and root around and pick their parts out of these big boxes. And so the cardboard was a mess, because you had to open up the boxes, you had to cut the boxes open, and then there'd be cardboard to throw away, cardboard dust everywhere. You know what happens when skids get handled by wooden skids, get forklift, they break them. Yeah, there's wood scrap, there's cardboard dust, there's just a mess. And so you always had to have people on brooms just cleaning up the plant because of all this debris you were generating by dealing with the cardboard boxes. So that's what it was like back in the day. Now, how and why did it change is probably the next point of interest, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I've been thinking about that since our conversation, knowing this phone call was coming up. And a couple things happened. You know, Toyota Georgetown was just getting going during the mid 80s. And slowly, I think, there's probably concurrent with Toyota Georgetown getting going, where they were bringing some of their key suppliers over. Okay. So their key suppliers were used to delivering parts of Toyota the way Toyota wanted those parts delivered. It was likely not in those big cardboard boxes. So that was probably the way some of this more sophisticated dunnage started to get introduced to the American car companies, because they probably started to source some parts from these new Japanese suppliers that were all of a sudden here. And when all those negotiations are going on about shipping quantities and whatnot, they offered up, I imagine those containers started to be offered up. And then the other thing that was happening was, there's two more factors. Another factor was the industry started to evolve towards just-in-time, just-in-sequence. And that created this much shorter loop between the manufacture of the part, the delivery of the part, and the delivery of the part, because they would only be made and put in containers maybe as little as an hour and a half before they're actually going to be put in the car. And so these very short loops I think that created a demand for returnable packaging as well, returnable dunnage, because it made no sense to throw something in a cardboard box, ship it to the plant, throw the box away, get another cardboard. So all of a sudden that started to make sense. And then the third factor that was going on was in automotive, this will never end. There's always a push for efficiency, and it's a very cost competitive business. And the assembly plants, at least in the Ford system, started to pay a lot more attention to how parts were presented to operators.
Mhm.
And a big 4x4x4 cardboard carton that the operator had towards the end had to reach way down into to get a part was wasting time. And so then they started to think about more friendly containers. They started thinking about gravity feed rollers that would bring these smaller containers and present them very close to the point of fitment to reduce the reach time and the walk time and the operator. And so now you got these three factors. You got the Japanese suppliers who were familiar working with Toyota on more sophisticated dunnage, and you've got the just in time, just in sequence coming in, and then now you've got this people have been to Toyota Georgetown and saw how well the parts were presented to the operators, and they wanted to duplicate that in the domestic plants. And I kind of think that those are probably three big factors that push that evolution from disposable dunnage to returnable dunnage. That's my observation of your point of interest with returnable dunnage.
It makes sense. It really does. It's so interesting that, when you first learn about lean, the first thing they do is talk about Dr. Deming and how it was adopted first by the Japanese manufacturers, right? And then you kind of come full circle again, and you see the same thing in the 80s, it sounds like, with returnable packaging when the Japanese suppliers started, selling cars in the US. And in order to compete, they brought in Deming and tried it again. So it's very, very interesting how the packaging changes, especially towards returnables, morphed out of that. So that's great. Yeah. So how was it a smooth transition, or was it kind of fits and starts, or how did when they did make these changes of gravity flow racks, did you see a lot of experiments, or did you see a lot of planning and then it just rolled out, or did you see it come in fits and starts?
I wouldn't call it fits and starts, Camille. They're at least not from perspective of the management teams within the assembly plants, because how do I explain this? We were used to every model year cycle having a task to reduce headcount, and then therefore having to continuously bring in methodizations to reduce the labor content in the vehicle. So there may have been fits and starts from the MP&L perspective, because they were dealing directly with the suppliers on maybe some of them were reluctant or couldn't change as fast as they wanted or something. But we wouldn't necessarily be seeing that.
Okay.
If that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And
So
you got to find somebody that was really on the front lines on the interface between Ford purchasing and the supply base to maybe would give you a different perspective, where I was kind of the customer or end user, as it were, for the returnable dunnage, if that makes sense.
yes, and it does. And I think that being the end user, you would have seen that, because you would have seen, packaging changing, or, having to say this wasn't working, so they had to fix it. And it sounds like it was, fairly well, it was planned out, it was pretty smooth, so that by the time it came to you as the customer, that it was functional, you know, and actually
I,
make improvements.
I can't recall any. I can't recall any real disasters with packaging where parts came into the plant and we just threw up our arms and says we can't work with this. It just
It's good to
I
hear.
can't recall any.
That's good to hear. I mean, and people need
Yeah,
to remember that with
yeah.
packaging.
We had we had we had processes where since the assembly plant was essentially the customer for the packaging, there were processes in place where if there were changes, we would have a chance to review them before they were actually put into place.
Okay. And that makes sense too, because we know that one of the cardinal rules is never stop the line, right? So,
No, that's right.
and nothing was getting there to the line if if it was going to stop it. So it had to be flawless before it got there. So that makes sense. Okay. So I know it was a while ago. You probably don't even remember how long of a how long this took. But did it take months, years? You know, was it over the course of 5 years or 10 years to make this transition? Or was it pretty quick?
Well, I'm going to say that it was an evolution, not a revolution.
Okay.
It wasn't like somebody just snapped their fingers and one day all the cardboard was out of the plant. But I kind of remember that would have been around we've been in the late 90s. I remember, yeah, sometime around the late 90s, there was a push to get the cardboard out of the plants. I think it was just kind of starting to happen, and then there got to be a little bit of a bigger push, and they got over the hump. And I think if you went in the plants today, you'd see a lot more waste, a lot less waste in terms of the packaging than you would have back in the late 80s when it was when they were getting rid of the cardboard. There were compactors all over the place, and you know, one of the jobs of the there was a in the Ford system, each production zone would have one or two employees called upgrades, and they were kind of they were your real time problem solvers. If an operator missed an operation, they could go a couple stations down and they could fix it before it got to the end of the line. And one of their responsibilities was to help swap out these boxes for the operators. We went from one to the next, and then they would be throwing the cardboard in the compactors. And yeah, that kind. I don't think you'll see much of that kind of activity today. The evolution was towards smaller containers of parts located closer to the operators. So it's not low. It's you see, yeah. How do I describe this? You don't see these big high mountains of stock stored right at the line. It tends to kind of flow out on a lower level, so the line of sight is much better. You don't you can see it. You can see into the line as opposed to just looking through the stock racks. And then with the gravity feeds, it's a much different view than it used to be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you're right. Now you are seeing, you know, smaller, you know, containers coming to the line. They're refilling on a regular basis. And you do have a really good line of sight. And now I think what I've seen at various plants, I see corrugated boxes for things like fasteners and wire harnesses. Those are probably about the only two items that I'll see regularly staged and corrugated. And I worked in an engine plant where when they first started, they were dumping the fasteners into returnable totes on the line. But over time, people thought, well, that takes too long. So they would just put the box inside of the returnable tote. So they determined that they didn't cause that much dust. So I definitely see the transition. I've seen old pictures from, Henry Ford when he first started the plant, and he was using, he's buying getting crates of material, and he was using the crates as part of the truck, kind of, I guess, what's now the trunk, what would be the trunk of the vehicle. That's what he would use for the baskets. And I won't date myself, but when we were kids, one of the fun things my father would do with us was take us to car plants to tour on Saturdays. And I forgot about it, but when you said that, I do remember seeing, racks right by the line, and seeing big bins of material right at the lines. You had, like you said, almost like a big wall of material, versus now that material is all stored in warehouses, and it's brought, or it might be, stored in the kitting area, or, it's not right at the line. They present the parts to the line in much smaller quantities. So that's really cool. You probably think this is like, why do you want to know this? But you are going to be surprised at the fact that people are going to be interested in hearing this.
Well, I gotta admit, it's kind of a trip down memory lane for me too, because these are things that they're in the back of your head someplace, but it's not like you pull them forward and think about them all the time.
Right. You're like, I'm leaving I'm retiring, and who's gonna think about a package, right? And then you meet this person who keeps mini packages, returnables at her desk, right? So yeah. Is there anything else that you can think of that you would like to add?
I just thought of something else. There was also, we talked about that, the engines and transmissions and the big stuff, the body and white panels. There were special racks made for those. I also remember a kind of a classification where there was of container that was returnable back in the day. Early was we used to have wire baskets that you could bust down. And so I think they were probably part of the legacy, kind of the earliest returnable dunnage. And then later on, you started to see some more sophisticated things, like there was a maybe it was Denso. There was a Japanese supplier who made the most beautiful radiators, and they came in these they came in stacked up, ready to be pulled out, and they were in some kind of reusable corrugated container. It wasn't corrugated cardboard, because it had kind of a hard, slick surface, and it was much more durable than that. But it had some kind of a cushioning effect at the same time. It was
like the plastic that you see for postal service bins.
Yeah, kind of a honeycomb kind of effect. But they were light, they were durable, and they cushioned those radiators when they were in transit. They were pretty slick. That was a very, very clever kind of container.
It sounds pretty cool. I had a booklet of different types of materials that I don't know where I put it, but I put it here so it'd be handy to go through. But I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So in the wire bins, that when I see them being used in automotive right now, they're generally coming from overseas. That's one of some of the rare items that are now coming from overseas. They usually do come in those bins, and they're usually designated by an OEM.
I think that wouldn't surprise me if it's essentially and it's probably some kind of a commodity as opposed to something that really adds a lot of value to the vehicle. It's not, it's probably don't come in colors or anything. It's just a bit that you fit on the car. And yeah, you buy them in huge quantities at the lowest possible cost you can, and they get put in big boxes and they get on a container, and there's probably a month of those things on their way right now.
Yes, probably sitting on a port for the last 2 years right now
Yeah.
at this point, the way the supply chain is. So, yeah, this is great. Anything else?
Well, Camille, I'm sorry to say that we've pretty much exhausted my memories of packaging and my time in the assembly plants in the early 80s and late 80s and early 90s. So I'm running out of things to talk about.
Oh, no, actually, this is great. You were very succinct. You succinctly explained, you shed light on the nature of the business at the time and what drove it, because a lot of people are like, we have no idea what drove it. Now I can say this was driven by lean initiatives that came from the competition from the big three that was already implementing lean. And Deming, like, who would have thought that Deming had something to do with directly driving the switch to returnables? No one has ever said that. So you've given
I
us.
think I said that. He was certainly
Yeah,
involved
yeah.
with pushing forward towards Deming's. Deming is a variability reduction thinker.
Mhm.
You reduce to him, waste and variation, or waste follows variation. If you reduce variation, you get less waste. And that was his big push. And of course, we were looking at what Toyota was doing, because Toyota was very, very much with the Toyota production system in that space of reducing variation. And if you can reduce variation, then your work in process starts to disappear. And with their thinking about the 5S's, busting up cardboard doesn't seem to fit into their thinking, does it?
No, that's like the -5S.
That's that's a
Yeah.
very low value added activity. It doesn't do anything at all to contribute to building a quality car or truck. So it's not surprising that they got away from cardboard, and everyone else is followed. Toyota, I think some of their cars are pretty plain sometimes, but you can't fault Toyota as far as their manufacturing processes.
They don't break down. I had a Solara, a 99 Toyota Solara until 2015. And the only
That's
reason I
16
got
years,
rid
that's
of
a
it,
long time.
yeah, the only reason I got rid of it was because of rust. It needed like a new windshield, but they were like, we can't fix the windshield because the frame is rusted out and we can't put, that was literally the only reason why I didn't keep the car, because the engine was perfect. I mean, there was nothing wrong with that car from a mechanical standpoint. It just rusted out. And my friends and coworkers would call it demolition derby. And I'm like, but I don't have a car note.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I get it. Yeah, this is great. You have literally given me a treasure trove of information that you probably don't even think anything of, but it's tying packaging to the returnable packaging to lean. A lot of people don't realize how integral it is to that. So I appreciate it. I'll let you know when I post this. I think I'll put it on my website. And we'll see how many looks it gets. I'll tell people about it. I'm going to be at the Automotive Packaging Summit in September, so I'll tell people about it too. So I'll keep you posted.
Well, that would be great. And let's compare notes every once in a while.
Okay, sounds great. Sounds great. Okay, my last question, which has nothing to do with automotive packaging, are those world books behind you?
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Those are from the those would be ones the parents bought for my brother and I in the I guess I'd have to pull one out to look, but those Those are early to mid 60s.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Wow. That's a collector's item. My
Well, that's
uncle,
why they're up there, because they look cool. They look cool in a
yeah.
bookcase.
Yeah, my uncle sold World Books, so he would always give us a set. So we had a set that was that color, that was probably from the early 70s. And then we got a new set that was brown. But yeah, they were awesome. I was so sad when I heard that they went online. I'm like, really? So that's great. So that was my non-automotive question because I was staring at those the whole time. I'm a nerd if you hadn't already figured that out.
Well, listen, there's nothing wrong with having an inquisitive mind and being interested in all kinds of different things. That's all good in my book.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, let's keep in touch for sure. So nice to meet you. And I'm so glad we had the chance to have this conversation. And I'll keep you posted on the feedback because when I told people I met this guy that worked in automotive when they switched over to returnable packaging, they were like, oh, really? So you'd be
You
amazed.
must have quite an interesting crowd of people you hang out with.
Yeah, well, yeah, I am. Like I said, the Automotive Packaging Summit. So how specific can you get, right? So yeah.
Well, send some traffic to my website.
Okay, will do. So I can give you a copy of this too, and you can put it on if you want. So
Okay.
I'm not gonna edit it. I'm not a video editor, so it'll probably be pretty boring, but I'll send it to you. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Great, Steve. Nice to meet you and talk to you. I should say talk to you again.
Likewise.
Okay.
We'll see you soon.
All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.